know the why human trafficking work is needed: to fight for the freedom of modern-day slaves. But love, passion, commitment isn't all you need to be an effective and successful anti-trafficking advocate. Learn the how. I'm Dr. Celia Williamson, Director of the Human Trafficking and Social Justice Institute at the University of Toledo. Welcome back to the Emancipation Nation podcast. Thank you for tuning in to part 2 of our conversation with Taryn Hughes. Today we continue talking about secondary trauma and stress and how we can prevent it, or at least address it, with some self-care techniques. I'm really interested. So if someone calls you up, you come in, and first, they're probably a little intimidated to call you up because now we understand that organizations can be traumatized, along with employees in the organization. So I don't know what you're going to come and you're going to say and you're going to do. And maybe you're going to re-traumatize me and blame me for not having a great organization where I take care of my people. So what do you do when you get there, and step by step, what happens, just in a case example?
Sure. I mean, I think the first thing to realize, and I always stress this to organizations, secondary traumatic stress is actually now categorized as an occupational hazard. So that already takes away the stigma. So it's not like PTSD where some people get PTSD and some people don't. They say, as far as secondary traumatic stress, every single professional who's working in a helping, protecting, or supporting profession is going to be impacted. Every single person. So it's just a sliding scale, of a spectrum of how much are you going to be impacted and when. There's no question of if someone's going to be impacted. So I think I try to stress that because that helps people understand, the professionals and the leadership. This is not something unique to you. This is universal. And I personally have, I've gone through my own experience with living with secondary traumatic stress. And I didn't have the tools and the knowledge that I have now. This was about 10 years ago, where I've been working in the prison system with youth who were sentenced to life without parole. I was working in the Los Angeles prison system. And after 3.5 years, it had a life-altering impact on me as a person, and sort of what was normal when I went into the job, that normal shifted and it sort of got distorted. And I think that's what happens to many professionals. There's a lot of like dark humor that starts to pop up, or just in our social circles get really close and tight. And so we're always, even when we're socializing, we're still talking about things in work or society that we want to change. So it's this insidious shift that comes slowly and almost invisibly. So I find that once organizations understand that this is something that's in the air that we're breathing, not the literal air, but the atmosphere that we're all breathing around the world, then it makes them a little bit, I guess, more trusting and easeful to know, hey, it's not just your organization. It's not just you guys, everybody in the room. But one of the things that shifts things for the participants is I do a lot of experiential and group work. And, sometimes instead of getting them to sit through a slideshow of presentations of definitions and symptoms and horrible outcomes and horrible statistics, like I get them to work in groups and say, okay, well, what are some red flags that you see popping up for yourself or people that you know in this industry? And they're really able to articulate their experience, and the fact that they're doing it together and they're working as a group, that is one of those pinnacle shifts where they're like, oh, it's not just me. I thought I was crazy. So it breaks that isolation. And we know that trauma isolates and disconnects us from other people. and makes us hide some of the things that we feel shameful about, and which are often the symptoms. So bringing people into the room together to have these conversations is just so important. And I've just we have amazing reviews, and great words from participants about saying that everybody should have this kind of training. They're adamant about it, and they're adamant about the impact that it has on their lives.
Oh, and so do you typically start with a training following the assessment? And what are the various types of packages, and how long is the training, and do people come together, and like you mentioned, groups and those sorts of things? So what's the process?
Yeah, so as mentioned before, sometimes the organization, depending on the size of it, sometimes they prefer to start with a leadership training to get their leaders on board. Other places with smaller staff sometimes start with a staff training, but we're working first and foremost to get the foundational information in, and the smallest amount, the shortest duration of time that we have that we work with an organization right now is a 6-hour training. And that 6-hour training can happen on multiple days, or it can happen all at once, where we do a full day training or we do 2 half-day trainings. And I really feel that just ethically, it's important to have enough time for them to be able to learn and go through these experiences to be deeply enough for them to integrate the knowledge, and then to have some sort of action plan for themselves and their colleagues on the exit of the 6 hours. We've actually been turning down contracts for the last year. Anyone who wants us to come out and just do this simple presentation on self-care tips and symptoms, we don't do that. We don't do any 45-minute or hour-and-a-half presentations of that nature, just because we want to make sure there's a result for the participants.
And do you ever do it virtually, or do you always do it in person? And what if you get to the organization and they said, well, we want the 6-hour training, and then you find out, oh boy, you need way more than the 6-hour training? What do you talk to them about? They may need some extended work, or what happens then?
So the 6-hour training is really the starting point, and then within that proposal, we also put together the suggestions of what the next steps would be, and we just say, look, this is a process. Get the foundational training in first. Then we can look at some executive or leadership coaching. We can look at some coming in and working with you on some organizational change and some help with implementing some of the procedures and protocols that would be helpful. And then, or maybe they want to put their leadership through a training that's more specialized on how to lead teams exposed to trauma, so that they're really thoroughly versed in this. So we definitely suggest next steps. And then I just always like to honor each organization's self-agency, that they will know the right time that they need it. So there's no pressure. And I assume their organizations will be there 6 months or a year from now, or 2 years from now, and that we can just continue to have those relationships, and we can be of support in whatever way they need.
And do you do it virtually ever, or is it always in person?
I haven't done it virtually yet. I wouldn't be opposed to doing certain aspects of our programming virtually. I think, definitely I've worked with one-on-one clients and executive coaching virtually. That's easy to do via video. I would have to, depend on the organization and the size of the group and the intended outcome of the program, because in person is, obviously very ideal when you're dealing with topics such as traumatic stress exposure.
And what's the range of the packages? How much are the packages in terms of, what's the very least expensive? What's the very most expensive?
It really depends. We're pretty transparent with our rates because we are a woman-owned business and certified with the government to do work. So we don't have much leeway in negotiating prices up and down. But each package is so different. Like I just did a training in Tokyo. So obviously flying to Tokyo, there's additional costs versus doing something just locally. So I just hesitate to quote rates because there's variables about how many people are in the room, which type of program it is, where it's located, what's the duration, what kind of outside support they need, and if there's been any intense crisis recently, which obviously would require additional support beyond the hours that we're in the classroom with participants.
But you'll go as far as, or as little as a training, but it has to be substantial enough, at least 6 hours, all the way to what level of intensity will you do one-on-one work with individuals as well?
I do have at this point I'm limiting the one-on-one work just because of the capacity, but the one-on-one work that I do is with executives and leadership of organizations, because that feels really important, because the impact I can have with those people in the leadership positions by working with them one-on-one, both for their personal exposure and for the questions that they have about the organization and leading teams exposed to trauma. That seems to me like a very, very good investment of time to make that change for larger numbers. I'm not at the point where I can take on one-on-one clients any longer for the just personal exposure if they're working in the workplace, and they're working in general staff. I don't have enough capacity to do that, but I do definitely recommend if they feel like if they're in their audience now and they feel like they're being exposed to high levels of traumatic stress because of the nature of their industry that they're working in, definitely start to connect us with leadership at the organization, so we can work on getting programs and we can get the support for them while we're in the room doing the training. The training usually makes a big difference for the staff members. So oftentimes that's a good starting place.
And where can people learn more about what your organization does?
So they can definitely visit our website, and it's www.forest, and forest is spelled like the trees, forest, Forest, Hughes, HUGHES.com. So we have tons of information there, and we're going to be starting to put out some more material online via video and getting more active with sending out some resources, information on our mailing list. So definitely, take a look at our articles there, because they do give a lot of foundational information that's really important. And obviously, you can also find out about our services and how to contact us there.
Do you have any presentations or anything coming up that people could maybe attend and learn more?
Sure. If there are any professionals in Nebraska, we do have a conference that's coming up. The registration is still currently open, and the title of the conference is Heal the Healer. It's going to be it's at a really beautiful retreat center just outside of Omaha. And we're going to get together for 6 hours, and the participants are really going on a deep dive journey to come into the space of both learning about secondary traumatic stress, but really focusing on the healing aspects of the work. And because it's at a retreat center, it's just going to be very tranquil and restorative, as well as extremely informative. And I believe that conference is also eligible for the continuing education credits, definitely in nursing, I think social work, and not sure about the other sectors, but definitely in nursing. And then if people are in the criminal investigation and analysis field, we're going to be at the Association of Law Enforcement Criminal Intelligent Units Conference training, and it's down in Dallas, Texas I think it's the first week in May 5th to 8th or 9th. And so we're going to be running a training for anybody who's on the certification track to become certified as a supervisor in the criminal intelligence unit field. And so we're one of two people that are running the training programs at that conference that are mandatory for that certification track. And I heard we're working with over 400 supervisors. So we're really looking forward to that.
That's awesome. And can people find out information about how to register on the website that you just gave?
I can post it there. Yes, I can post that information there. And if they, they can also feel free to reach out and I can send them more details.
And what's your email, Taryn?
Sure. If anybody's looking to reach out to me directly, you can find me at my first name. It's TARYN at foresthughes.com.
That's excellent. I think you're doing awesome work. And can you tell us what you do to take care of yourself? Because you are in this arena of hearing from very traumatized people. So what do you do to take care of yourself?
Yes, I would be happy to share that. And one of the things that I really stay true to on a very regimented basis is the concept of pacing my exposure. So I definitely, if I know I'm going in to teach some really intense workshops, or if I'm working with clients that have a lot coming up for them at that time, I always make sure to schedule downtime directly afterwards. So if I'm facilitating earlier in the morning or early afternoon, I'm going to leave the rest of that afternoon unscheduled and give myself the freedom to, go take care of myself that afternoon if I'm feeling a little bit exhausted or depleted, or if I notice that I'm having, thought ruminations or going over something again and again in my head. I'm just going to make sure that I get out, get some physical exercise, hang out with people that I love, and definitely I have regular therapeutic oversight so that I'm not the only one carrying this work. So I definitely make sure that that's first and foremost on my schedule every week to debrief about the impact this work is having on me. And then, definitely all the basic self-care that people probably know, and doing debriefings with my co-facilitators, really talking and connecting after we facilitate and saying, how was that for you? And really talking about the impact on us. Those things definitely help. And then making sure I take a month off in the summer.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. So what do you suggest for people that, like myself, that impose these work schedules on ourselves because we're workaholics and we have done something really intensive for like 3 or 4 hours, and then we think we need to go take a walk or enjoy ourselves or drive to lunch or whatever, but we think no, I can fit 2 or 3 more hours of really good work in. What would you suggest for people like me?
It's interesting because I feel like you speak to what I see among most helping professionals. I feel like, there's sort of this tribe of, of us that work like that. I think one of the fundamental things I found that helps to shift that is really, it's a deep shift. I can just say it's not an easy quick fix, but it's a deep shift from literally we've almost become invisible in our own lives. I'm going to try to explain this in a way that can resonate. We are often celebrated, and our identity is very closely woven with the work that we do. So in order to take better care of ourselves, we actually have to start to separate out our identity of who we are and where we gain recognition and esteem and even self-esteem from,
Mm-hmm.
and strengthen who we are as an individual outside of work. Like it takes some time to do this, but it's really putting the spotlight of like who who are you? If work went away tomorrow, how would I describe you to a friend? And it's that deep fusion that happens when we do work, especially in the anti-trafficking sector. That deep fusion of our identity on such a deep level that we've become invisible in our own life, and the work has really stood in its place, and sometimes that work stands in its place even in our reputation and how people introduce us and how people view us. So it's not a quick fix. I wish I could give you a quick fix, but that's what I've seen helps truly shift that, not just for the moment in the afternoon that you remember to activate that self-care tool, but really for your life.
Yeah, I think that's very, very profoundly helpful for me, because if you asked where Celia went, Celia's gone. Celia's looking for the other Celia that works in anti-trafficking. So, so I
Yes.
really have to
Yes.
develop myself outside of this work. What do you suggest for people that have to get those billable hours? They have to, this is externally imposed. There
Mm-hmm.
is no opportunity to go spend 2 hours or take the afternoon off to go retool yourself. What do you suggest for those folks?
It's something that I bump up against all the time, especially working in agencies and nonprofits. And this is why we really advocate to work in partnership with the organization, because we could have the best self-care kit ever, and we could be doing all of those things, but then, like you said, some of the exposure and intensity and rapidness of the work is really outwardly, it's imposed from the outside, and there's not much that can be done about it because of sometimes the high need, the limited resources, et cetera, et cetera. But I think getting leadership trained and getting the organizational leadership to understand the impact that it's not just having on the people, but the impact that it's having on the organization. Because every organization and agency wants to increase retention. They want to decrease interpersonal conflicts. They want to decrease sick days. They want to increase innovative problem solving. They want
Mm-hmm.
to minimize their liability, and minimize the chance of mistakes or errors. Well, all these things are very, very tied to secondary traumatic stress exposure. Like those are all symptoms. So,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
I keep going back to the root that it might seem like they're pulling back on what they're asking of their employees, but if they get more effective results, and if they get people that show up on time, are healthy, are strong, are able to collaborate in really efficient ways, are able to not become cynical, and can
Mm-hmm.
make the least amount of errors, be on time, meet deadlines. That's what every employer wants. And I think they can either stay in that cycle where they keep ignoring the impact and they keep ignoring the air that we're breathing, and they can continue to search for these workshops that promise the world and deliver
Mm-hmm.
something simple, or they can say, okay, this is real, look at the research and the data, these are the symptoms, this is what I'm seeing all the time, maybe we should take a different approach. So I really advocate for organizations to get on board with that.
I agree with you. I think the billable hours has done somewhat of a terrible disservice, because as you're trying to keep your productivity up and you're trying to do your billable hours and you're hit with this trauma, chronic trauma, over and over and over, but your organization won't let you relax. They think you're lazy or you're not making your
Mhm.
productivity. So you start to just walk through life like a ghost, like just doing
Yeah.
doing the things, the mechanics of the things. It's like if you asked me to run a 10 miles, and I got to 3 miles, and then I started walking, And then I started dragging, and my heart isn't in it, but I know I got to get these 10 miles done. And no one cares except that I get to the 10th mile so that they can do the billing, so that they can bring money into the organization. And I think that is what is hitting a lot of our social service agencies right now. Is the
Yeah.
client getting better? We don't care. We want you to get that billable hour so that we can get the money in the door so we can continue to do the work. And I'm not saying that's every organization, but sometimes organizations get so big and bureaucratic that they forget that they were supposed to be effective. And the way to be effective is to make sure that your staff, the tool that you're using, is good and clean and healthy. So,
Yes.
yeah, I agree totally. I hope people will contact you and maybe even attend the workshop. Would be awesome as they begin to heal. So, thank you so much, Taryn, for taking care of the healers,
Thank
making
you.
sure that they're healthy. Your agency is awesome.
Thank you. And thank you so much for taking this time, Zelia. And I really appreciate it. And I really value the work that you're doing in the world and the fact that you're holding space for these conversations. So we're all look forward to a brighter future in this way.
You know, some of us, because of our chaotic childhoods, had a childhood filled with trauma and abuse and neglect. And because of that, we miss some of those important developmental milestones. And sometimes it's hard for us to now regulate our emotions. Whatever the case may be, some of us can't heal because we keep pretending that we weren't hurt. During this time of Corona, we are trying to help others and putting ourselves at risk in doing that. It's causing us great fear, it's causing us stress, it's causing us trauma. And we don't want to take it home to our loved ones, but we want to keep helping. You may be dismissing this experience, but this experience is just one more straw on the camel's back. And these experiences add up. Do you know that trauma affects every component of our lives? It affects your ability to have a good relationship, a friendship, an intimate relationship. It robs you of genuine joy. So I want to tell you what Danielle Kiopi said, that your trauma is valid, even if other people have experienced worse. Even if someone else who went through the same experience doesn't feel debilitated by it, even if it could have been avoided, even if it happened a long time ago, even if no one knows about it, your trauma is real and valid, and you deserve a space to talk about it. It isn't desperate or pathetic or attention seeking, it's self care. It's inconceivably brave. And regardless of the magnitude of your struggle, you're allowed to take care of yourself by processing and unloading some of the pain that you carry. And I want you to know that the Center for Disease Control, now, the Center for Disease Control, so this is the most essential thing they do, is try to control disease, estimates that there could be 160 to upwards 214 million people affected by the coronavirus. And that's just in the US alone. And of those, 200,000 to 1.7 million will die. I want you to know that my father has been diagnosed with corona. He lays in the hospital bed tonight fighting for his life. This is a man who survived the Navy, who worked 43 years and only missed 2 days of work. This is a rough and tumble man. He's 94 years old. He's a diabetic. And he's struggling. So pray for me and my family. And I will bring you the next episode next Tuesday. Until then, please stay safe. Stay in your homes. And we're going to get through this together. If you like this episode of Emancipation Nation, please subscribe and I'll send you the weekly podcast. Until then, the fight continues.